To kick off my review series, I'm going to start with a webtoon I just binged called Unholy Blood. Unholy Blood is a supernatural webtoon starring a protagonist who's trying to live a normal life in a world where vampires run rampant and are feared by many. This is made especially hard by the fact that she herself is a rare and superpowered pureblood vampire. She teams up with a rising star in the police force whose goal is to end the vampires' reign so they can both take down the city's most dangerous vampires. The story is fast-paced and action-packed, but also balances its drama elements to make it a super engaging read. The art is fantastic both in and out of the action scenes, and I do hope it ends up being a romance because there's definitely eye candy. Overall, this one gets a green light. I highly recommend it to anyone. It has a wide appeal and is the perfect binge read to get sucked into. Water Dragon's Bride, not to be confused with a manhwa with a similar name, is a fantasy romance series that follows an isekai plot. The protagonist Asahi accidentally falls into a portal as a young child that brings her to a fantasy world based off of ancient Japan. There, she is unwillingly sacrificed to the water god. I give this one a yellow light. If you really like supernatural shoujo manga, you might be into it, especially if you're okay with love triangles. The art is pretty simple, and it can be cute but sometimes lacking. The protagonist is really passive, and I feel like a lot of the time the characters are really talking about her rather than interacting with her. I wasn't vibing with either of the love interests. I'm not crazy about the childhood best friend trope, and the stoic and emotionless god was like a little too emotionless for me. Overall, I felt like this series had a lot of good energy going into it, but it just sort of petered out at some point. And it had sort of a disappointing and confusing ending, which left this super meh for me. This green light review is brought to you by the fact that Yen Press waters my crops and feeds me on the daily. The White Cat's Revenge, as plotted from the Dragon's King lab, has a long title like many stories in the isekai genre that are adapted from web novels. But even if that's not normally your cup of tea, if you're a shoujo lover, I absolutely ask you to hang in there because this cute and whimsical story really stands out amongst the rest. The story's protagonist is unwillingly summoned to a fantasy realm with her childhood best friend who she just can't seem to escape. When her friend becomes a priestess princess, she's cast to the side and exiled, but it turns out she has her own kind of special magic. In order to lay low, the protagonist begins masquerading as a talking cat with the help of fairy magic, but she realizes too late she has to keep up the ruse now in front of the Dragon King's court. This art is lovingly rendered. The protagonist and love interest have great chemistry. It's one of my favorite shoujo of slow burn romances. The story is funny, cute, and lighthearted. I definitely recommend this one. So, I saw this manga recommended on TikTok so much that when I saw it on sale in store, I immediately bought it. Please pause to read the warnings, and I'll get on with the review. My initial impression was based on the art alone, which is really fantastical and beautifully rendered. But the problematic story quickly made this manga uncomfortable to read. Ron in the Grey World is about Ron, the daughter of a powerful sorceress who is in a hurry to grow up. She uses a pair of magical sneakers to magically transform into an older version of herself. Ron is naive, childlike, and immature. She's a 4th grader, and she never acts in a way that makes you think otherwise. This is in stark contrast to the highly sexualized and fan-serving visual depiction of her physically when she's transformed. One of Ron's love interests is an adult. The adult is sometimes played as sort of an antagonistic character, but his love of her and her mutual love back is played straight. It's taken seriously. He is redeemed, in quotation marks, at the end. One of his last words to her is that he loves her even if she's 10 years old. Yikes.